Question 1. Risk estimation. Uncertainty in risk estimation. Medical device manufacturer is conducting risk assessment for new infusion pump. The team estimates the probability of an overinfusion event based on historical data, but realizes that the available dataset is limited to previous models with different software algorithms. Some team members argue that the probability should be adjusted to reflect potential software failures in the device, while others believe the data should be used as is. How should the team handle the uncertainty in risk estimation? A. Use the historical data without modification as it is the only objective data available. B. Apply conservative estimate by increasing the probability value to account for unknown software risks. C. Disregard historical data completely and only estimate risk based on expert opinion. D. Assume worst case scenario where failure is certain, leading to the highest possible risk score. Answer. B. Apply a conservative estimate by increasing the probability value to account for unknown software risks. Explanation. ISO 14971 requires that uncertainty in risk estimation be carefully considered, particularly when using historical data that may not fully capture new risks. Section 4.4 of ISO 24971 2020 Guidance for ISO 14971 emphasizes that when estimating probability, factors such as changes in design, materials, or software must be accounted for. Using historical data without modification, option A, is inappropriate if key design changes affect risk. Ignoring historical data, option C, may lead to an incomplete analysis. Assuming a worst-case scenario, option D, is unrealistic and does not align with ISO 14971's risk-based approach. A conservative estimate, option B, allows for a more robust risk assessment by acknowledging potential unknowns while still using available data. Question 2. Risk control measures. Inherent safety by design. Company is designing new implantable cardiac device and is evaluating different risk control measures to reduce the risk of battery failure. The engineering team is considering multiple approaches, designing more durable battery with redundant fail-safes, adding external warnings in user manuals about battery failure risks, implementing an automatic shutdown mechanism to prevent overheating. Which of the following best describes the most effective risk control approach according to ISO 14971? A. Option 1. Improve battery design to minimize failure risk. B. Option 2. Provide detailed instructions in the user manual. C. Option 3. Implement an automatic shutdown mechanism. D. Combine all three approaches equally without prioritization. Answer. A. Option 1. Improve battery design to minimize failure risk. Explanation. According to ISO 14971, risk control measures must follow a hierarchy of effectiveness. The most preferred risk control method is inherent safety by design, ISO 14971 2019 Clause 6.2, which means eliminating or reducing risk directly within the device design itself. In battery durability, option A follows this principle and is the most effective strategy. Adding warnings in the user manual, option B, is the least effective approach because it relies on users following instructions perfectly. ISO 14971 2019 Clause 6.4. Implementing an automatic shutdown, option C, is a protective measure which is effective but secondary to design changes. Combining all approaches for option D is useful, but ISO 14971 prioritizes inherent safety first, making option A the best choice. Question 3. Scenario-based. Post-production monitoring and risk management. Dr. Patel, Regulatory Affairs Specialist at medical device company, received report from hospital that their newly launched insulin delivery system has experienced multiple unexpected shutdowns. The manufacturer's risk analysis initially estimated the probability of this failure mode as rare, based on laboratory testing and pre-market clinical trials. The increasing number of incidents suggests high real-world failure rate than anticipated. What should Dr. Patel and the company do in response to this new post-market information? A. Immediately recall the product, as any unexpected event requires recall under ISO 14971. B. Conduct root cause investigation and update the risk assessment considering real-world data. C. Disregard the incidents because pre-market risk analysis already estimated failure probability. D. Inform regulatory authorities but take no further action unless they require recall. Answer. B. Conduct a root cause investigation and update the risk assessment considering real-world data. Explanation. ISO 14971, Clause 10 and ISO 14971 emphasize that post-market surveillance and real-world data must be integrated into ongoing risk management. New information, such as higher than expected failure rates, requires a reassessment of risk and potentially updated risk controls. Recall option A is not immediately required unless the failure presents an unacceptable risk. Ignoring the issue, option C, violates ISO 14971's requirement for continuous risk assessment. Simply informing regulators, option D, without further investigation does not fulfill risk management responsibilities. Option B aligns with ISO 14971's process, reassessing the failure rate, investigating causes, and determining whether risk controls need improvement. Question 4. Risk estimation in implantable medical devices. Risk estimation is a critical step in ISO 14971 risk management, particularly for high-risk devices such as implantable pacemakers. Suppose a company is developing a next-generation pacemaker that integrates wireless communication for real-time monitoring. During the risk estimation process, the team identifies a potential cybersecurity vulnerability could allow unauthorized access to the device, potentially leading to life-threatening malfunctions. Which of the following approaches aligns with ISO 14971's best practices for risk estimation in this scenario? A. Estimating risk based solely on historical data from previous pacemaker models, assuming that new cybersecurity risks are unlikely to change risk levels significantly. B. Using qualitative risk matrix to assess the probability and severity of harm, considering both technical and human factors and integrating cybersecurity threat modeling into risk estimation. C. Deferring cybersecurity risk estimation to post-market, since real-world threats are difficult to predict during development. D. Relying on third-party cybersecurity assessments instead of conducting an in-house risk estimation, since external firms specialize in security evaluation. Answer. B. Using a qualitative risk matrix to assess the probability and severity of harm, considering both technical and human factors, and integrating cybersecurity threat modeling into risk estimation. Explanation. ISO 14971 emphasizes the importance of systematically estimating risks, including emerging risks such as cybersecurity threats in connected medical devices. A is incorrect because relying solely on historical data ignores new technological advancements and associated risks. C is incorrect because risk estimation should be conducted proactively, not deferred until after market release. D is incorrect because while third-party assessments can be valuable, manufacturers must maintain responsibility for conducting their own risk estimation as part of the risk management process. The correct approach E aligns with ISO 14971 by incorporating a structured qualitative risk matrix, assessing both probability and severity, and considering cybersecurity as part of the risk estimation process. Question 5. Evaluating residual risk acceptability. A manufacturer of an in vitro diagnostic device used for detecting early-stage cancer has implemented several risk control measures, including improving test accuracy, updating software algorithms, and providing clear user instructions. Despite these efforts, there remains a residual risk of false negatives, where the device fails to detect cancer in some patients, potentially lead delayed treatment. According to ISO 14971, how should the manufacturer evaluate the acceptability of this residual risk? A. Compare the residual risk to the predefined acceptability criteria and determine if it is as low as reasonably practicable, considering the benefits of early cancer detection. B. Assume that residual risk is acceptable because risk control measures have been implemented and documented in the risk management file. C. Communicate the residual risk only to regulatory authorities without informing users, since false negatives are an inherent limitation of diagnostic devices. D. Completely eliminate residual risk by further refining the test until it guarantees 100% accuracy as per ISO 14971's requirements. Answer A. Compare the residual risk to the predefined acceptability criteria and determine if it is as low as reasonably practicable, considering the benefits of early cancer detection. Explanation. ISO 14971 requires manufacturers to evaluate whether residual risks are acceptable based on predefined risk acceptability criteria and the risk-benefit balance. B is incorrect because merely implementing does not automatically make residual risks acceptable. C is incorrect because transparency in risk communication is essential and users should be informed of limitations. D is incorrect because absolute elimination of risk is often not possible in medical devices. The correct approach A aligns with ISO 14971 by using alert principles and weighing the benefits of the device against its residual risks. Question 6. Risk control measures for radiation-emitting devices. A medical device company is designing a new diagnostic imaging system that emits ionizing radiation. During risk analysis, they identify a risk of patient overexposure due to software malfunctions that could cause unintended prolonged radiation exposure. Which of the following is the most appropriate risk control measure under ISO 14971? A. Designing the software to include automatic shut-off mechanisms when radiation exceeds a predefined safe threshold. B. Relying on operator training to ensure that exposure times remain within safe limits. C. Including a warning in the user manual stating that radiation exposure should be minimized whenever possible. D. Accepting the risk as unavoidable and documenting it in the risk management file without implementing additional controls. Answer A. Designing the software to include automatic shut-off mechanisms when radiation exceeds a predefined safe threshold. Explanation: ISO 14971 prioritizes inherent safety by design as the first risk control measure before considering procedural controls or user warnings. B is incorrect because reliance on human intervention is less effective than an automatic safety feature. C is incorrect because while warnings helpful, they do not reduce the likelihood of harm. D is incorrect because risks should be mitigated where possible. The correct approach A follows ISO 14971's hierarchy of risk control by incorporating technical solution to automatically prevent excessive radiation exposure. Question 7. Post-market surveillance and risk management review. Dr. Patel, a regulatory affairs specialist at a medical device company, is reviewing post-market data for an infusion pump that has been in use for 2 years. Recent field reports indicate that some units have experienced intermittent malfunctions, leading to underdosing of critical medications. While no severe patient harm has been reported, some users have expressed concerns about treatment efficacy. According to ISO 14971, what is the most appropriate action for the company to take? A. Conduct a risk management review, re-evaluate residual risk, and determine if additional risk controls or a field corrective action are necessary. B. Assume the risk remains acceptable since no severe patient harm has been reported and continue monitoring future complaints. C. Immediately issue a product recall for all units in the field as any device malfunction is unacceptable under ISO 14971. D. Discontinue post-market surveillance activities since the device has already been on the market for 2 years. Answer A. Conduct a risk management review, re-evaluate residual risk, and determine if additional risk controls or a field corrective action are necessary. Explanation: ISO 14971 requires manufacturers to continuously assess post-market data and adjust risk management activities accordingly. B is incorrect because risk must be reassessed even if no severe harm has occurred. C is incorrect because a recall is necessary if risk levels exceed acceptable limits, which requires further assessment. D is incorrect because post-market surveillance must continue throughout the product's lifecycle. The correct approach A ensures compliance with ISO 14971 by systematically reviewing risk data and making informed risk control decisions. Question 8. Cybersecurity risks in medical devices. A new insulin pump model integrates Bluetooth connectivity for real-time monitoring and remote adjustments. During the risk analysis phase, engineers identify a potential cybersecurity risk where unauthorized access could alter insulin dosage, potentially causing hypoglycemia or hypoglycemia. Which of the following best represents an appropriate risk control measure under ISO 4971A? Implement multi-factor authentication and encryption protocols to secure wireless communication. B. Rely on patients to regularly check their blood glucose levels and manually adjust settings if irregularities occur. C. Include a general disclaimer in the user manual stating that cybersecurity risks exist but are unlikely to occur. D. Assume that cybersecurity threats are outside the scope of ISO 14971 and should be managed separately. Answer: implement multi-factor authentication and encryption protocols to secure wireless communication. Explanation: ISO 14971 emphasizes proactive risk control, including designing security features to minimize cybersecurity risks. B is incorrect because user-dependent actions are less reliable than technical safeguards. C is incorrect because disclaimers do not mitigate risk. D is incorrect because ISO 14971 requires manufacturers to address all risks, including cybersecurity. The correct answer A aligns with best practices for cybersecurity risk control. Question 9. Risk analysis for implantable devices. A company is developing a new implantable cardiac defibrillator that detects and corrects life-threatening arrhythmias. During risk analysis, engineers identify a failure mode where a software bug could prevent the device from delivering a shock when needed. This could lead to patient death. Under ISO 14971, what should the manufacturer do to address this risk? Implement multiple layers of software verification and validation, including real-time self-diagnostics to detect failures before they impact therapy. B. Assume the risk is unavoidable due to the complexity of software and accept it without implementing further controls. C. Rely on patient monitoring by healthcare providers to manually intervene in case of device failure. D. Provide extensive warnings in the user manual about the potential failure mode and let physicians decide whether to use the device. Answer. Implement multiple layers of software verification and validation, including real-time self-diagnostics to detect failures before they impact therapy. Explanation. ISO 14971 prioritizes inherent safety by design, followed by protective measures and information for safety. B is incorrect because risk must be mitigated where possible. C is incorrect because reliance on external monitoring is not a substitute. Robust device design. D is incorrect because warnings do not prevent failures. The correct approach A aligns with ISO 14971 by integrating fail-safe mechanisms. Question 10. Fault tree analysis in risk assessment. A manufacturer is developing a robotic surgical system that assists in minimally invasive procedures. The risk management team is conducting a fault tree analysis FTA to determine the probability of a catastrophic failure during surgery. Which of the following best describes how FTA should be used in risk assessment under ISO 14971? FTA should be used to systematically identify possible combinations of failures leading to a hazardous event, allowing for proactive risk reduction. B. FTA should be conducted only after the device is on the market, as real-world usage provides the best failure data. C. FTA should replace all other risk analysis methods because it is the only tool required under ISO 14971. D. FTA should be used to justify why a catastrophic failure is unlikely rather than as a tool to improve device safety. Answer. FTA should be used to systematically identify possible combinations of failures leading to a hazardous event, allowing for proactive risk reduction. Explanation. FTA is a top-down risk analysis tool that helps manufacturers systematically identify failure paths and improve risk mitigation strategies. B is incorrect because risk analysis should be done before market release. C is incorrect because ISO 14971 allows multiple risk analysis methods. D is incorrect because FTA should drive risk control, not just justify acceptability. Question 11. Risk-benefit analysis in high-risk devices. A novel artificial pancreas system for type 1 diabetes patients provides automatic insulin delivery, but has a 1% risk of system shutdown due to battery depletion, which could lead to severe hypoglycemia. However, the device significantly improves long-term glucose control and reduces complications. How should the manufacturer apply ISO 14971 principles to determine if the residual risk is acceptable? They compare the benefits of improved glucose control against the risks of system failure and determine if the overall benefit outweighs the risk. B. Assume the risk is acceptable since the failure rate is low and document it without further evaluation. C. Mandate that patients carry a backup insulin delivery system at all times instead of modifying the device design. D. Withdraw the device from development because any risk of harm may be unacceptable under ISO 14971. Answer A. Compare the benefits of improved glucose control against the risks of system failure and determine if the overall benefit outweighs the risk. Explanation. ISO 14971 allows for risk-benefit analysis, meaning a risk can be acceptable if the benefit outweighs the harm. B is incorrect because residual risks must be justified. C is incorrect because design improvements should be prioritized over reliance on actions. D is incorrect because not all risks require discontinuation if mitigated appropriately. Question 12. Risk control for single-use medical devices. A company manufactures a single-use catheter for emergency procedures. The risk management team identifies a problem where some hospitals might reuse the device despite warnings, increasing infection risk. What is the best risk control measure under ISO 14971? A. Design the catheter with integrated tamper-evident features that prevent reuse. B. Assume the risk is entirely the hospital's responsibility and do nothing further. C. Rely on user training programs to discourage reuse. D. Include warnings in the instructions for use IFU without modifying the device design. Answer A. Design the catheter with integrated tamper-evident features that prevent reuse. Explanation: ISO 14971 prioritizes inherent safety by design over procedural or warning-based risk controls. B is incorrect because manufacturers must address foreseeable misuse. C and D are incorrect because design changes are more effective than relying on human compliance. Question 13. Post-market surveillance and risk reevaluation. A medical imaging company receives multiple complaints that its MRI scanner software occasionally misaligns images, leading to misdiagnosis. No severe patient harm has been reported, but the issue persists. What is the most appropriate action under ISO 14971? A. Conduct a risk reevaluation and determine if software updates are necessary to prevent misdiagnosis. B. Ignore the complaint since no direct patient harm has occurred. C. Wait for regulatory authorities to request corrective action before taking further steps. D. Assume that since the device passed pre-market testing, no additional risk controls are needed. Answer A. Conduct a risk reevaluation and determine if software updates are necessary to prevent misdiagnosis. Explanation: post-market surveillance requires ongoing risk evaluation. B, C, and D are incorrect because ISO 14971 mandates proactive assessment and risk reduction when new safety concerns emerge. Question 14. Software failure mode risk management. A blood glucose meter manufacturer identifies a software bug that intermittently miscalculates glucose readings. What is the most appropriate response under ISO 14971? Issue a software update or recall affected devices if necessary. B. Document the issue but take no action unless regulatory authorities intervene. C. Include a note in the user manual that software errors may occur. D. Assume user error is the main cause and do not modify the software. Answer A. Issue a software update or recall affected devices if necessary. Explanation: ISO 14971 requires manufacturers to address software failures that could impact patient safety. B, C, and D are incorrect because proactive corrective actions are required. Question 15. Human factors and risk management. During usability testing, engineers observed that users struggle to operate a new ventilator's emergency shutoff function, increasing the risk of accidental misuse. What should the manufacturer do next? A. Redesign the ventilator controls to improve usability and reduce the risk of human error. B. Rely on detailed training sessions to ensure users understand the device. C. Assume that only trained professionals will use the ventilator correctly. D. Include additional warnings in the user manual but keep the design unchanged. Answer A. Redesign the ventilator controls to improve usability and reduce the risk of human error. Explanation: human factors engineering should be integrated into risk management. B, C, and D are incorrect because design improvements are more effective than relying on training or warnings alone. Question 16. Risk control strategies for implantable devices. A company develops an implantable neurostimulator for chronic pain management. During risk analysis, the team identifies that long-term exposure to bodily fluids might lead to corrosion of the electrodes, potentially causing device failure and patient injury. Which of the following is the best approach under ISO 14971 to manage this risk? A. Improve the device design by using corrosion-resistant materials and coatings to prevent failure. B. Provide a warning label instructing patients to monitor for signs of device failure. C. Accept the risk as unavoidable because all implantable devices degrade over time. D. Rely on periodic checkups with healthcare providers to detect failures early. Answer A. Improve the device design by using corrosion-resistant materials and coatings to prevent failure. Explanation: ISO 14971 emphasizes inherent safety by design before relying on warnings or clinical monitoring. B and D are incorrect because they do not eliminate the root cause of failure. C is incorrect because the manufacturer is responsible for minimizing foreseeable risks. Question 17. Cybersecurity risk management in medical devices. A manufacturer develops a wireless insulin pump that allows remote adjustments via a smartphone app. During risk assessment, the team identifies a vulnerability that could allow hackers to remotely alter insulin dosages, causing potential harm. What is the most appropriate action under ISO 14971? Implement robust encryption, authentication measures, and regular software updates to prevent unauthorized access. B. Issue a warning that patients should use the device only in areas with secure Wi-Fi. C. Assume that cybersecurity threats are beyond the manufacturer's control and take no further action. D. Rely on hospital departments to monitor and prevent cyber attacks. Answer A. Implement robust encryption, authentication measures, and regular software updates to prevent unauthorized access. Explanation: cybersecurity risks in medical devices require proactive risk control measures. B, C, and D are incorrect because ISO 14971 requires manufacturers to reduce cybersecurity vulnerabilities through device design. Question 18. Risk acceptability criteria for high-risk devices. A company develops a heart-lung machine for use in cardiac surgery. During risk evaluation, a potential failure mode is identified. If the oxygenator malfunctions, patients could suffer severe oxygen deprivation. According to ISO 14971, how should the manufacturer determine if this risk is acceptable? A. Compare the risk to similar devices on the market and assess if the benefit outweighs the harm. B. Assume that because the device is critical for surgery, all risks must be accepted. C. Let regulatory bodies decide whether the risk level is acceptable. D. Reduce the risk to zero before launching the device, even if that delays production indefinitely. Answer A. Compare the risk to similar devices on the market and assess if the benefit outweighs the harm. Explanation: ISO 14971 allows for risk-benefit analysis. B is incorrect because risks must be justified, not assumed acceptable. C is incorrect because manufacturers, not regulators, must define risk acceptability. D is incorrect because not all risks can be eliminated, but they must be reduced as far as possible. Question 19. Residual risk disclosure in medical devices. A manufacturer completes the risk analysis of a new dialysis machine and determines that, despite risk control measures, there remains a small chance of blood clot formation due to unexpected device malfunctions. How should the manufacturer address this residual risk under ISO 14971? A. Clearly document and communicate the residual risk in the device's instructions for use (IFU) and inform users of necessary precautions. B. Hide the residual risk in the technical file to avoid liability issues. C. Assume that if the risk cannot be eliminated, the device should not be marketed. D. Reduce the residual risk further even if it negatively affects device performance. Answer A. Clearly document and communicate the residual risk in the device's instructions for use (IFU) and inform users of necessary precautions. Explanation: ISO 14971 requires manufacturers to inform users about residual risks. B is incorrect because transparency is essential. C is incorrect because not all risks require withdrawal if they are outweighed by benefits. D is incorrect if reducing the risk compromises device function. Question 20. Post-market surveillance for risk management. A company launches a wearable ECG monitor for at-home heart rhythm tracking. After release, complaints arise that the device occasionally misses detecting arrhythmias, leading to delayed medical intervention. What is the manufacturer's responsibility under ISO 14971? A. Conduct post-market risk evaluation and implement corrective actions if necessary. B. Assume the issue is due to user error and ignore the complaints. C. Wait for regulatory agencies to mandate recall before taking action. D. Document the complaints but take no further action unless patient deaths occur. Answer A. Conduct a post-market risk evaluation and implement corrective actions if necessary. Explanation: ISO 14971 requires continuous post-market surveillance to identify new risks. B, C, and D are incorrect because the manufacturer must proactively investigate safety concerns. Question 21. Combination product risk management. A pharmaceutical company develops a pre-filled syringe containing a new chemotherapy drug. The The risk management team identifies that patients with limited hand strength may struggle to activate the syringe, leading to underdosing or incorrect administration. Which action aligns best with ISO 14971? A. Redesign the syringe for improved usability, such as adding an ergonomic grip or auto-injection feature. B. Provide additional user training and include extensive warnings in the user manual. C. Assume the healthcare providers will administer the drug correctly. D. Market the syringe as is since no direct harm occurs from difficulty in use. Answer A. Redesign the syringe for improved usability, such as adding an ergonomic grip or auto-injection feature. Explanation: ISO 14971 prioritizes design improvements over user training or warnings. B, C, and D are incorrect because they do not eliminate the risk at its source. Question 22. Failure mode and effects analysis, FME, in risk reduction. A company is developing a new ventilator for hospital use. Engineers perform a failure mode and effects analysis, FME, and identify a risk. If the oxygen valve sticks, the ventilator may stop delivering oxygen. What should the manufacturer do next under ISO 14971? Implement design changes, such as redundancy in the oxygen valve system. B. Assume that routine hospital maintenance will detect and fix the issue. C. Document the risk but take no action unless failures occur in real-world use. D. Train users to manually check the valve before each use. Answer A. Implement design changes such as redundancy in the oxygen valve system. Explanation: ISO 14971 emphasizes design-based risk reduction. B, C, and D are incorrect because they do not adequately address the failure mode. Question 23. Risk escalation process in medical device companies. A manufacturer's quality team discovers that blood pressure monitor sold in multiple countries occasionally gives false high readings, leading to unnecessary medical treatment. What is the most appropriate action under ISO 14971? A. Conduct formal risk assessment and determine if corrective action is needed. B. Assume users will recognize false readings and ignore the issue. C. Discontinue the device immediately without assessing the scope of the problem. D. Wait until more complaints accumulate before taking action. Answer A. Conduct a formal risk assessment and determine if corrective action is needed. Explanation: ISO 14971 requires manufacturers to act proactively on emerging safety concerns. B, C, and D are incorrect because they delay or ignore proper risk management. Question 24. Human factors engineering in risk management. A manufacturer is developing a portable automated external defibrillator for public use. During risk assessment, the team identifies that non-medical users may struggle to apply the electrode pads correctly, leading to ineffective defibrillation. Which of the following is the best approach under ISO 14971 to mitigate this risk? A. Implement user-centered design improvements such as pre-connected pads, voice instructions, and visual placement guides. B. Rely on user training programs to teach people how to apply the pads properly. C. Include a warning in the device manual about the risks of incorrect pad placement. D. Assume that in an emergency, users will follow the existing instructions correctly. Answer: implement user-centered design improvements such as pre-connected pads, voice instructions, and visual placement guides. Explanation: ISO 14971 prioritizes inherent safety by design before relying on warnings and training. Design changes like voice prompts and visual guidance are the most effective way to reduce user-related risks. B, C, and D are incorrect because they depend on user behavior rather than eliminating the underlying issue. Question 25. Risk management for artificial intelligence (AI) in medical devices. A company is developing an AI-powered diagnostic tool that analyzes chest X-rays to detect lung disease. During risk assessment, engineers identify that the AI model occasionally misinterprets images, leading to potential false positives or false negatives. According to ISO 14971, what is the most appropriate response there? Implement validation studies using a diverse dataset and continuously monitor AI performance post-market. B. Include a disclaimer that the AI system is not responsible for diagnostic errors. C. Accept the errors as unavoidable since no AI system is 100% accurate. D. Reduce sensitivity to minimize false positives, even if it increases false negatives. Answer: implement validation studies using a diverse dataset and continuously monitor AI performance post-market. Explanation: ISO 14971 requires continuous monitoring and validation of AI-based medical devices. B is incorrect because disclaimers do not mitigate risk. C is incorrect because risk must be reduced as far as possible. D is incorrect because adjusting sensitivity without proper validation introduce new risks. Question 26. Risk management for supply chain issues. A medical device company manufactures a pacemaker that requires a specialized lithium battery. The supplier reports a potential issue where a small percentage of batteries degrade faster than expected, leading to premature device failure. What is the manufacturer's responsibility under ISO 14971? A. Perform risk analysis to determine the impact of battery degradation and consider alternative suppliers. B. Assume that patients will replace their pacemakers before battery failure occurs. C. Inform healthcare providers but take no further action unless failures occur in the field. D. Continue using the batteries without assessment since the issue affects only small percentage. Answer A. Perform a risk analysis to determine the impact of battery degradation and consider alternative suppliers. Explanation: ISO 14971 requires proactive risk assessment and mitigation when supply chain issues affect device performance. B, C, and D are incorrect because waiting for failures instead of addressing known risks violates proactive risk management principles. Question 27. Risk analysis for home use medical devices. A company develops a portable oxygen concentrator for home use. During risk assessment, engineers identify that patients with limited dexterity may struggle to replace the oxygen filter, potentially reducing device effectiveness. What is the best way to address this risk under ISO 14971? A. Redesign the filter mechanism for easier replacement and provide clear visual instructions. B. Include a warning in the manual that patients should seek help if they cannot replace the filter. C. Assume that caregivers will assist patients in maintaining the device. D. Accept the risk, as all medical devices require some level of maintenance. Answer A. Redesign the filter mechanism for easier replacement and provide clear visual instructions. Explanation: ISO 14971 emphasizes design solutions over user-dependent risk controls. B, C, and D are incorrect because they rely on user behavior rather than improving the device's usability. Question 28. Compliance with ISO 14971 and regulatory requirements. A medical device company submits its risk management file to the FDA for approval of a new infusion pump. During review, regulators request additional documentation on how the company determined the acceptability of residual risks according to ISO 14971. What should the company provide? A documented risk-benefit analysis demonstrating why residual risks are acceptable compared to the device's benefits. B. Statement that all risks have been reduced to zero and no residual risks remain. C. List of potential risks without further justification. D. Declaration that the manufacturer alone decides risk acceptability without external input. Answer A. A documented risk-benefit analysis demonstrating why residual risks are acceptable compared to the device's benefits. Explanation: ISO 14971 requires manufacturers to perform documented risk-benefit analysis to justify residual risks. B is incorrect because no device can have zero risk. C and D are incorrect because risk acceptability must be justified, not assumed. Question 29. Risk management in connected medical devices. A manufacturer produces a smart glucose monitor that transmits real-time blood sugar data to a mobile app. During risk assessment, the company identifies that if the device loses Bluetooth connection, critical glucose alerts may not reach the user. What is the best approach under ISO 14971? Implement a backup alert system such as audible alarms on the device itself. B. Include a warning that users should check their phone frequently for missed alerts. C. Assume that users will recognize when the connection is lost and restart the device. D. Accept the risk, as all wireless devices experience occasional connectivity issues. Answer A. Implement a backup alert system such as audible alarms on the device itself. Explanation: ISO 14971 requires redundancy in critical functions to minimize risk. B, C, and D are incorrect because they rely on user awareness instead of proactive risk reduction strategies. Question 30. Evaluating risk acceptability for life-sustaining devices. A company develops a ventricular assist device, VAD, for patients awaiting heart transplants. Despite extensive risk mitigation, there remains a 1% chance of mechanical failure, which could lead to fatal outcomes. Under ISO 14971, how should the manufacturer determine if this risk is acceptable? A. Perform a risk-benefit analysis comparing the VAD survival rates to patients without the device. B. Assume that since the device is life-sustaining, all risks must be accepted. C. Wait for post-market data to confirm whether the failure rate is too high. D. Declare the risk unacceptable and stop production, as all medical devices must have zero failure. Answer A. Perform a risk-benefit analysis comparing the VAD survival rates to patients without the device. Explanation. ISO 14971 allows risk-benefit analysis for life-sustaining devices. B and D are incorrect because risk must be evaluated, not assumed acceptable or unacceptable. C is incorrect because proactive risk assessment is required before market release.